Welcome to the Success Pick and Mix podcast. I'm your host, Nicky Raby, a professional pick and mixer. I'm a personal brand coach, a speaker, an actor, a creator, and a podcaster. I'm on a mission to help you find and create your version of success. Your pick and mix of life and business on your terms. A blend that complements your personality, your goals, and your circumstances. Since 2018, I've been sharing interviews and mini episodes to help you unlock your next step, to make it real and make it happen. Round here, we dream big. We go for the ideal version. We talk about money and make moves our future selves would be proud of. This podcast is free and available for you whenever you need it. So do rate, review, and subscribe for new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices and availability, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests. Now, on to today's episode. In today's episode, I'm talking to Cydney Mar. She's a fashion designer, a former elite athlete, a product development strategist, and a wellness enthusiast. And as you'll hear from this episode, she has a flair for reinvention and believing that life lessons support your next steps, even in the face of the challenge. I know that you're going to love this episode today. I really wanted to get Cydney on the podcast because it's really important for me to share all kinds of different stories. Cydney says on the podcast she's about to turn 60, and I wanted to learn and share some of her experience and things that she's learned along the way. Here's the episode. Grab a piece of paper and a pen. I know you'll want to make some notes. Hi, Cydney. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Nicky. I'm so delighted to be here and to meet and chat with you today.
Oh, me too. When you got in contact with me, I was just so chuffed to hear your story and couldn't wait to chat with you. So I'm really pleased that we've got to have our little date today. If people don't know you, would you mind just starting with a little introduction about who you are and what you do?
Yes, my name is Cydney Mar, and I'm actually a fashion designer by trade. Some of the listeners may know me from having been on QVC for many years, but I am from Montreal. I started in life as a figure skater. I went on to become an international fashion designer, selling my fashions on QVC worldwide. And I have made a segue in the last few years, which we'll chat about, into the world of wellness. And I'm also now helping people develop their own products, because I just love the idea that we all have gifts to bring to the world, and yet it's not a straight line.
No.
And sometimes we know that it's kind of wiggly like a piece of string, but when you have a great idea that you really want to bring to life, it's sort of like, come, let me help you, because I've already been blessed at bringing so many wonderful ideas to life to people all around the world that I want to help other people now.
Amazing. And we need people like you who are going to guide us and support us, because as we were just saying before we started recording, the business journey can be tough. There can be lots of obstacles that perhaps we're not used to, or difficulties or challenges we may face. And without the right support, it can be really hard to navigate those.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, as I had mentioned, I kind of started out in life as this elite athlete. I was a national level competitive figure skater. I loved it. Nicky, I thought I was going to do that until the end of time. And it was, you know, I mean, in my life, in the skating world at that time, there was Torvill and Dean and all of these greats. And that was going to be my life, that I was going to finish my competitive career and then go on and develop shows. And it didn't happen because I was almost killed in a skating accident, and everything I had built my life on was gone in a minute.
Wow. How did that make you feel?
I was devastated, and my recovery was a long time. It took me a year and a half to learn to walk again. My coaches and doctors were all talking together. My doctor was a sports medicine doctor, and he went to the government and arranged for 5 U.S. doctors to come to Canada to do the first micronerve surgery, and they performed that on my leg. So because it took me so long to get better, I actually had time to process the fact that I was never going to skate again. And
wow.
It's not easy for anyone who has sort of hung their hat on, this is what I'm going to do, or this is who I'm going to be married to, or this is how I'm going to contribute to the world, and then have everything change.
And what happened then? How did your recovery shape you? How did you sort of work with it rather than against it?
Well, I was very blessed. My coach was a guy named Brian Power. He was also my mentor, and he was brilliant. He actually taught us an approach to life. He wasn't coaching us to be competitive figure skaters. So everything we learned in skating, I realized I could apply it to how I was going to approach everything in life. Because you know what they say, what's that saying, Nikki? Is it how you do anything is how you do everything?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
So,
and I use it. It pops up all of the time. And it's a really good benchmark for me to check in with.
Absolutely. So, I mean, whether or not I'm taking out the trash or going to be, putting together a pitch note for something, I've learned that through Brian that I could apply what he taught me in skating to the next thing, to the next thing, and the next thing. So that's what happened was I actually did all of my skating costumes. I did many of the other skaters, and it was really a labor of love. I went back to fashion school during the time that I was recovering and in therapy, learning how to walk again. And by the time I got to the end of that year and a half, and it's funny, none of the skaters really had the guts to say to me, Cyd, you're never going to skate again. And I couldn't know. I couldn't know that I wasn't going to skate again until the end of that year and a half. And just one of the young skaters came to me, and he was quite brash. I loved him to bits and pieces, but he was brash. And he said to me, Cyd, he said, get over it. You're never going to skate again. And I was so angry with him, but it was sort of the thing that I needed to hear.
Wow. Yeah. And was that true? Have you been able to?
Well, I can skate for fun, but when you're at that level and you can, do doubles and triples, and if you want it to be small, if you want it to be big, it was sort of like, that again, another phrase is like, how high do you want me to jump? We could literally do whatever our coaches wanted us to do. It wasn't like I go skating for fun, and it's certainly delightful to smell the rink and to get onto the ice and to hear my blades on the ice, but it's not the same.
No, and once you've been in that, I've never been an ice dancer, only in my head. Like you, I've watched a lot of Torval and Dean, and a lot of our listeners, we grew up on that, and they've actually developed a show over here called Dancing on Ice, and it's amazing what your body goes through, and once you've felt those kind of sensations, it's hard when you don't have that. And so how did you transition into moving the fashion aspect into becoming a business and really stretching your entrepreneurial muscles?
Well, I really learned, how can I say it? Because when I was skating, I was making costumes for the other skaters. So I had to learn how to charge for it, on a small level, because I'm for the last competition, I think that I must have made 30 costumes for all the different skaters. And when I went back to fashion school, I my parents were entrepreneurs. My father was in real estate as well as insurance. And so he helped me, and it was very, how can I say it? It was very, had me really participate. So he helped me build a small studio in our family home. So I helped him, laid subfloors, and then he cashed in one of his insurance policies, and he said, "Sid, here's a small chunk of money." And I have to tell you, it wasn't very large. I think it was $1,400 at that time. So that I could buy fabric, and I created a line, and I went down to the Vancouver showroom, and talked to those people, and they said, this is how you prepare a line list. This is what you need to show. And I just did it on the ground. And I realized that I needed to go to knock on doors and say, "Hi, this store looks like where my fashion should be."
Yeah.
And I just walked in. I guess I was too young. I was 20, 21. I didn't know any better, Nikki, honestly.
Was that because you just believed in the product, or did you just believe in yourself that you could do that? Or was that just who you were? You had nothing to lose?
Well, if you don't ask, you don't get. So I figured they're either going to kick me out, they're going to say, "Yes, make an appointment," or "Hi, yes, bring your collection in." And that's what I did. So I went, and then I made, I flew across the country, and I made appointments with different places, and I came home with a batch of orders, and my parents kind of looked at me and said, "Okay, so let's do this." And then, I went to the bank, and I got a small, line of credit based on those orders, and I produced it. And at that time, it was the early 80s. In Canada, we had, there was a lot of troubles in Vietnam. So we had what were called the boat people. And so I worked together with Government Canada to start employing them. And so I had a little studio with a little factory in my home because it was all couture. I was doing hand painted silks and handmade chenilles and working with West Coast woolen mills. And I was being featured. All of the, I had gone to New York the year before and won competitions. And so it's funny because the head of the school that I went to, she actually wanted me to go into the retail side. She thought it was going to be easier to succeed than truly going into design. And I, as I said, I guess I just didn't know any better. And when I went out and showed them my collection, they wanted to buy it. And then I got a big columnar pad and marked down all the styles and figured out how many of each I had to make and which sizes. And it was so fun. It was so fun.
Did you know that you had all of those skills within you before you actually did them, or were you quite surprised along the way that that was easy, or I can't believe I'm here already?
Well, I knew that I had the skills because I was personable and organized. I mean, one of the things that skating does teach you, and I feel like I was born with a Let's agenda because every 15 minutes is scheduled.
Yeah.
I had
to get up. It's a really good discipline, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. Your lessons are 6 o'clock to 6:15. And then another coach, then you might have 15 minutes of practice. Another coach is going to come by and, your next lesson is from 6:30 to 1:45. So your entire life is 15-minute increments. So I didn't even think about it. I was just able to kind of reorganize myself. And as a skater, we still had an awful lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not as if, all of that scheduling was boring. So we did have, time to do, our skating, and then in fashion, I had time to create everything and be organized and then go out and, dance with all my friends.
Amazing. And how did that move into QVC and going global? How did that happen?
Well, I was looking for different opportunities. I was in, after my parents passed on, I had built a new studio because, I had segued into making less expensive clothes because I wanted what I called women to have an everyday fabulous. I didn't feel that, the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 or more was really helping me serve women around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an awful lot of fun, I can tell you. And I did very well as a young woman, but I really wanted to learn the magic that happens when you can apply your design integrity to mass manufacturing. And so what happened was I was introduced to a gal who was in QVC, and I think she's still at QVC UK. And I was connected to her because one of my friends wanted me to, he felt that we had some synergy. And I was with her for about a year, and I helped build her business from $9 million a year to $16 million in the same year. But I realized that I didn't want to finalize a partnership with her. Yeah. So when I left her business, just because she and I were quite different, QVC came after me and they said, "We love working with you. What else can you do?" And I said, "Well, I have my own range that, I haven't shown you." Of course, I was doing the other brand for, my friend and I guess colleague at the time. And so I was invited back, and they had me start by doing Oriental inspiration. So I did the Chinese New Year's and the dragon boat and the spring festivities. I also did my Cydney Mar fashions. And from there, one QVC talks to another. So I ended up selling my fashions around the world in 8 different countries. And it was really quite marvelous. So I was at QVC Italia, QVC Germany, in the UK, of course, loving presenting over at Chelsea Piers, and later it moved up to Chiswick. And it was just really lovely having friends all over the world and be able to speak to my clients and, talk to them while I was on TV, and they would tell me what they wanted or what was working or not. And it was really quite delightful.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm so inspired. I always feel like in these conversations, like, oh, actually, I could do that. I'm going to start a fashion line. I would not have the first notion of how to do that. But yeah, it's interesting. And so then what happened after QVC? You mentioned your wellness company. How did that begin?
Well, in the midst, about 5 or 6 years ago, I still had my design studio and many contracts around the world with QVCs. I got sick. I managed to have my second near-death experience, and I caught nothing more exciting, Nikki, than mono. But because I was 54 at the time, and I am now a tender 59 going on 60, it crashed my immune system. So I ended up in the hospital fighting for my life. They had to operate to clear out the infection so that I could, struggle my way back to health. And my staff at the studio were just doing the best that they could. And when I returned to my studio a couple of months later, I lost almost all my hair.
Yikes.
Oh, yeah. And I still was contracted to all of these TV stations to show up live. I didn't want to wear a wig. I didn't want to have extensions. I really didn't have enough hair to put extensions on. And my naturopath felt sorry for me, and he said, "Let me try, to create something for you that will be natural," because the hair doctor, of course, had some very unnatural pharma meds, and I just had my body beaten the heck out of by, the doctors in an effort to save my life. And so I started taking this vitamin formula, and my hair started to grow back like crazy. It was amazing. And I thought, oh my goodness, okay. So I realized, of course, with what had happened, that I needed to make some life changes. And as I was finalizing, my contracts and winding down my studio, in the background, I was building my own simplified vitamin collection that I felt the world needed. They are therapeutic caliber. They aren't just, take something and nothing ever happens. Yeah. They're really therapeutic quality. And so I started building it in the background, as I said, of winding down my company, and then thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go out there and offer it to the world, and those who need me will find me.
And when you were in that, when you have Wow, life-affirming moments, or you're at that crossroads of life or death. What sort of, you mentioned that you knew you had to make some changes in your life. What kind of mindset shifts did you know needed to be altered slightly?
Well, I think two things really. I've always been very spiritual and very grounded and centered. But when you're on a plane, I was traveling about 150,000 miles a year. That really translates into being away 2 weeks of them each month, or 50% of the time. So, when you don't have everything quite settled at home, it can get to be quite rocky. So I think that life was asking me to slow down. So I had to heed the call.
Yeah.
I had already done it for a number of years. It's not as if I was, I really had to go to London or to Italy or to Germany again. It's not like, it's funny because, now that, in this world of online marketing, so many of the entrepreneurs are like, oh, I want to have the laptop lifestyle. It's like, no, I want to stay home,
I want to work when I want to work, or it's, I think there are windows in life to travel and to do all of that, but also there's nothing like being able to dictate your own hours and your own schedule and wake up when you want and all of those lovely, simple pleasures.
Well, what's interesting is that I had a huge responsibility of 10 staff, making sure that they were paid, that they had all the right instruction, that they were working well. Now I have a virtual team.
Ooh, how is that? What sort of leadership qualities has that required of you?
Well, it's actually, what's different is that, I've always learned, I've always known how to delegate well. This is what I do. For instance, when I was a partner in a company, one of the things I always, because I was responsible for all of the stuff, it was okay, you're a sewer, sew. You're a designer, design. And I'm saying that specifically because one of the things that women always do is we always love to be the help person. Yeah. So we see someone across the aisle needing some help, and we get up and we go over and we help them.
Yes.
But then we don't do our own job, and our own job doesn't get done. So it was sort of do your job. If you have time and your job is done, go and help so-and-so.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important distinction because we have, it's like we're wired to go and help. And also what I realized talking about mind shift, the shifts in our mind to really take care of ourselves. So I needed to look at my self-care, my self-love. Am I serving myself well? And I find that is the same thing that I end up talking to my clients who are looking for support and help in terms of addressing their health. I've had to create things I have something called Reboot Your Radiance, which has nothing to do with my vitamins. Yes, we call supplements for a reason. But first you need to drink enough water. You need to sleep. You need to eat.
You've got to do the basics, haven't you? And
so many people forget. And that kind of falls into the whole self-love and self-care. I mean, as a mummy that, you'll make sure your child is taken care of first, but you also need to take care of you so you can always be in good shape to take care of your little one.
Of course. And sometimes with the busyness of life, somehow the basics just move to the side. And, I had the same conversation with my partner the other day that he was just like, oh, I've got a bit of a headache. I feel a bit tired. And I said, have you drunk enough water today? And he was like, oh, actually, no, I haven't. And I watched him drink a big glass of water, and it was so clear that he was dehydrated, and then felt better. And, just carving out those simple things. It doesn't have to be complicated.
No, and I've been trying to teach people how to make healthy habits. And one of the things I do is I kind of trick people into making healthy choices. Like, for instance, talking about that glass of water. For myself, for instance, I'll have a glass of water, make my breakfast, and have my vitamins at the same time in the morning. But what I've done is I've prepared my vitamins, and guess where my vitamins are? They're in little dishes sitting beside my coffee cup.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to say to myself, go get your coffee cup for your coffee. I'm going to go get my coffee cup, and then I put my vitamins there, grab the vitamins at the same time. So if we can link something that is a new habit to something we already do, it's kind of one of my little tricks that I teach my clients.
Yeah, make it so easy for yourself that it doesn't need to be complicated. I think, and I'd love to chat more about this, of sort of building businesses and things like that. Sometimes we can feel like we need all of the magic formula in order for us to get to the perfect health or the amazing, huge, profitable business, whatever it might be. But actually what you need to do is break it down into little tiny steps so you can build momentum and move forward. How have you been able to help clients who want to do what you have done?
Well, on the health side, I have an ongoing, as I said, Reboot Your Radiance, so that they can segue, they can schedule it into their life little bit by little bit. And as you said, it's about batching things together,
yes.
Pacing yourself. Because if, like for me, in my morning when I have my water, my vitamins, and my breakfast, I love coffee, but I don't have coffee until after I finish that. And that's my treat. Okay, did it. Okay, I get to go have my coffee now. So that's sort of, what I do. If you batch things together, I find, and kind of chunk time, then somehow everything gets done. You can't do everything at once. That is really true. You need a map to get from the morning to the end of the day. And somehow, if it's scheduled, you can be spontaneous, because somehow nothing gets, as you would say, pear-shaped and sideways. It just somehow, that things are happening the way they're supposed to. Yes, I can skip out because my friend called me and said, I'm in your neighborhood. I'm banging on your door. Let's have a cup of tea.
Yeah. For sure. And I think sometimes people, especially creative people, can be wary of having too much of a schedule. I know, because especially from my acting background and things like that, people always are looking for the inspiration and then they'll get started on the project, or they have to be the starving artist, or wait for that little nugget of an idea. But actually you just have to do it and have that discipline of, right, I'm just going to sit down and see what I can write in the next 20 minutes. It may be complete rubbish, but it may be great as well. And I think once you have that momentum and those structures for yourself, it's much easier to be playful somehow within that.
And I would never recommend to anybody to wait for inspiration. Yeah. I think that, when we talk about body, mind, and soul, Nikki, yes, we need to be connected to source. So that's, our spirit. And our body needs to make sure that we've eaten, that we've slept, that it's taken care of. And the mind, or the middle self is really all about inspired action. So action actually, stimulates inspiration. So it's, by doing, it's done. So inspiration will come. I mean, if I waited for inspiration, my goodness, I'd be like that guy sitting on the mountaintop and nothing would ever get done. Yeah. The magic happens in the implementation.
Yes. How have you coped with overwhelm over the years, of really busy periods, or times of transition, or when perhaps you've not been feeling in your best kind of peak state? How have you coped with that? What's been really useful?
I actually write everything down and then I break it out. People laugh at me because, I'm the Post-it note queen.
Me
and
too.
I love Post-it notes, all versions of them, different colors, and then I color code them. And it's a way of kind of, and it's funny because I also do, as we were talking about earlier, I also help people develop their own products now. So, and they come to me completely overwhelmed. And the first thing I do with them is we basically do a mind dump. And it's write everything down. Now let's figure out which things actually belong on this list or not.
Yeah.
So let's take everything that doesn't matter right now. And because I have a production background, my mind just says this is first, second, and third.
Yes.
And then we look at, the budget, and then we scale it back, or we scale it up, or we figure out, how it has to be costed. So if you just get it all down on paper and out of your head, you can kind of massage it into what's going to work for your life. Like for those people who, are going from 9 to 5 and they have an idea and they only have a few hours at night, then if you have a roadmap, if you mark it all out into an action plan, you can actually do it. But if you try to do it all at once, you're going to put the cart before the horse for sure.
Yes. And also as well, I bet when you do that kind of exercise, you reveal things that perhaps are in your head that are maybe not true. Maybe you're carrying around these things of, well, that won't happen, or is it worth me doing that? And you uncover the stuff that's underneath, the limiting beliefs, the what ifs, or maybe I can't, or what if somebody is doing that, or all of these things that we carry around. And actually, by looking at them, you can see, oh, that's maybe not true, or that's an old belief that I don't need in this situation.
And I'd encourage people to separate those thinking bits. And it does take a bit of discipline. I think that, for instance, in my morning practices, I do morning pages. I dump out all the stuff and nonsense and, that circles around. It takes up brain space, right? So all of the things that I worry about and all of that, I've done my gratitudes. Then I sit down with my pen and, the long hand and scribble away and clear it out. Because when you want to sit down and work, you need to have a clear mind.
That's so good. Has there been anything else that has been really helpful to you that you just always come back to over the years?
That I always come back to over the years. Well, I pace myself, and I've said that a few times, but I really think that people try to get ahead of themselves. And if you just put things in bit by bit, are the foundational things done? Have I taken care of my accounting? Am I reaching the clients that I need to? Am I taking the courses that I need to learn the next step? It's all, and if you batch it, I just think that it's not as scary as we think.
That's so good for you to say, because I think also, I don't know if it's a UK thing, or sometimes there is starting a business or going to the next level. You're almost given a caution before you do it. And often there can be a lot of people saying, oh, how are you going to make that happen? Or naysayers, just people who perhaps are fearful for you. How do you keep those boundaries for yourself so you keep your focus and you keep connected with your own vision?
Well, there's absolute truth to being sensible. So, those who are trying to caution us, we can say they're coming from a place of love. They don't want us to crash and burn. And certainly, I have, as we were talking about earlier, it is my failures and successes have been all mine,
Yes.
And it's not been just an upward trajectory. I have, turned over millions of dollars in my career. I've also lost millions of dollars. So, those people who are the naysayers are coming from a place of love. But the question is, if you have an idea that's keeping you up at night, and it's your business idea and you feel it needs to be said, then start testing. And you can start small scale. I was listening to Damon John one day talking about how he started FUBU. And many years later, which is funny, I ended up working on some of the FUBU lines as the license, the master license holder here in Canada. But what was interesting is because he had this idea for these T-shirts, and because he had an idea for these hip hop, and he was hanging around at all these hip hop clubs, and he would take these T-shirts, and he had this idea, he just lent them to the performers.
Yeah.
And he didn't invest more than that, and he would bring them, and it was very funny. Apparently, he used to not wash them because he wanted them to be stinky so no one would keep them, right?
It's all glamour.
Exactly. So his samples, he was able to really maximize those samples. And all of the businesses that I have done have been sales oriented or sales driven. You make something to sell it. You don't make something to, play around with it, or you make something to figure it out how to make it from a hobby into a business, so go out there and show yourself and show it and look at what are the parts that, like if you're going to buy something or create something and then inventory it, then you better have a plan for how quickly you're going to sell it through, because I'm always cautioning my clients. Like, for instance, one of them came back to me where they were talking just about plastic bags. And I said, well, how many are you going to sell? So I said, no, don't, like, you can just go over to, the office supply store, buy them in, 8s and 10s for now. Don't go to the big store and buy hundreds and thousands. I said, do you have a basement?
Yeah.
And if we're looking at our budgets month to month, then plan it month to month, plan it quarterly. What are you going to sell through? Are you going to die if you don't sell all of that in 3 months? Can you afford to have it for 6 months?
Yes. And really break it down. And I think be really smart with it and do less and then and build on it.
Yes. And when I was in fashion, we never inventoried. Yes, we would inventory some basic things if we knew we were going to use, say, interfacings or some linings or something like that. We always cut to order. So inventory is meant to make into money.
Yes. Get the money through the door and then it works. It sells. You've got a product that people want. And sometimes it is just as basic as that, isn't it?
Yes, and people, when you have a great idea, you might not know what is the proper packaging. I mean, having been through the QVC system, I know what the test weight of a corrugated box has to be. One of my clients just sent something to me because she wanted me to see the actual sample and to also discuss some licensing here in Canada. And by the time it arrived, the box was all dented. And so you have to keep it small enough so that in the beginning, if you're going to make mistakes, you can work out the bugs.
Yes. Cydney, I have one final question for you, which is, where would you like to be in 5 years' time in business and in life?
Oh my goodness gracious. Because I have my 2 businesses, I really want to, in the wellness side, if I were to say, where do I want to be in 5 years? I would like it to be
everywhere.
Well, I'm already in 10 countries, so very excited about that. And because of, the new regulations in the UK, I am making sure that all of the GDPR is all sorted. We still have a little bit of time for that. But I would like to have it available enough so that people can find me. That is really, I just want to be where people need me on the wellness side. On the product development side, I would love to say that I, sort of quietly, happily say I helped people bring their dreams to life. We're in the middle of a couple of launches right now with some of my product clients. We've got some products coming out in June, July. There's some chocolates from my other clients. I've got, some homeware. So all of those happy launch stories are the things that I'd like to kind of look back at in 5 years from now and say, we not only launched them, but they're nice, sustainable business that are growing really solidly, because I'd like to share my failures to help them go on a more upward trajectory. Wonderful.
I loved this chat. I feel like there's so many great nuggets, and I'm sure people will go back and rewind, that's such an old-fashioned thing, but go back on the podcast and pick up and listen again and again. If people want to come and find out more about working with you or social media, where shall they go?
For my wellness, it's Cydney Mar Wellness .com, and my name is Cydney, Mars MAR, and Wellness. So they can find all of lots of healthy information. They can book a consultation with me if they're not sure if there's someone else who has a great product idea, but they don't know where to start. They would go to cydneymar.com. Again, tons of information and great freebies there. So there's lots of things for them to get started to figure out how to bring their dreams to life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I feel so inspired, and I'm going to go and give my son some dinner in a little bit, but I know this conversation is going to stay with me for many years to come. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your heart and all the information you shared today.
Oh, thank you. I'm so delighted. This has been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. Speak soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you haven't already, feel free to rate, review, and subscribe for all the brand new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. NickyRaby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices, availability, or just to have a chat with me, go to NickyRaby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests, and I'll see you next time.